Welcome to our very first online Coda Live in English. My name is Tyan. I'm the producer of this event. And, I'm recalling now when we had our first Coda Live almost 2 years ago now. It was in person. We were standing on a stage in a beautiful garden in Tbilisi, in Georgia, the country, not the state. And we looked at our audience as they quietly took their seats in front of us with their drink in their hand, and the sun was setting beautifully behind them. Today is obviously very different. I'm sitting in my bedroom and I can't see any of you, but I imagine you are watching it from your homes as well. And despite the pandemic, all the lockdowns and the Zoom fatigue, we have prepared something very special for you today. And I'm so excited that you are all joining us from around the world. But I know also that a lot of you couldn't make it today because of the time difference or other engagements. So we will be recording the session and we'll publish it on our YouTube channel. You will receive an email with the link as soon as this is over. And a special welcome to our members today. In case you didn't know, we recently launched a membership program. And thank you so much to those who already have joined. If you haven't, check it out. My colleague will just drop a link in the chat box now. It comes with some cool benefits like invites to member-only events, and of course, you will also be supporting non-profit journalism. And I really hope you enjoy this tonight as much as we enjoyed making it. And well, I won't keep you waiting any longer. I will pass it on to my colleague now, a very talented journalist, Isabel Cockrell, who will take you on a little journey. Isabel, we cannot hear you. Sorry, Isabel, unmute yourself, please.
It's a great start. I still haven't got used to unmuting myself a year into the pandemic. Today, we're going to be talking about what it means to live under constant technological surveillance, whether that's from cameras or facial recognition or the apps on our phones. We'll be thinking about how the feeling of being watched changes who we are, both as people and as a society. And above all, we'll be asking the question of the Panopticon. I just want to stop for a second because we're supposed to have a few visuals on the screen and I'm not seeing any, but I just want to double check that we can see them. Aha, there we go. So above all, we're going to be asking the question of the day, which is the question of the Panopticon, the feeling of being watched. So in case any of you don't know, a Panopticon is a circular prison with cells arranged around a central wall. The tower in the middle shines a bright light so that all of the cells are visible to the watchman in the middle. But the prisoners in the cells don't know whether they're being watched. They have to assume that they are always under observation. I think when we're talking about panopticons, we have to start by talking about probably the world's most advanced surveillance state, Xinjiang, a vast region of deserts and mountains in China's far northwest. It has steadily become one big panopticon. Cameras watch the region's Muslim minority population from every angle, and as many as 1 million Uyghurs and other minorities have been thrown into so-called re-education camps to be brainwashed into adopting the Communist Party line. Before lockdowns existed as we know them today, Xinjiang was in a digital lockdown. There were checkpoints on every street corner. There is mass collection of biometric data. A lucky few Uyghurs have managed to escape. Many of them go to Turkey. In Istanbul, the majority of Uyghur exiles are women. Their husbands, brothers, and fathers remain in Shinjang, often languishing in the region's camps and prisons. Life for the Uyghur diaspora is a state of limbo, waiting for a time when they can see their family again, not knowing if that time will ever come. Amina was one of the first women I met when I went to Istanbul 2 years ago. She lived in a book-filled apartment in Istanbul's Zeytinburnu area. She remembers being hauled into a police station in Urumqi, Xinjiang's capital, forced to have her picture taken, so that the facial recognition cameras could then track her movements. This is what she told me.
Bir maymundaklar daha her xil ulanda tumanda tutaydı, küldeydi, külsüz, kapağın türdeydi, türsüz, aştaq resim kaldı ki. Resimge poğan ki sizin avazınız ne? aldı ekan. Kitap gezib berdi, o'qib berdim 1 minut. 3 qatim o'qibdi. Ovozdan yasıdan, tabiiy ovozdan chiqmadi dedi.
On the streets of her home city, Amina felt that she could barely breathe.
Bu sizin hamma ishingiz nazorat ostida bo'ldi ekan. Bunda bo'lgandan keyin, masalan, men sirtda o'zimning uyimda yotaman, tilova chiqa olmayman, kira olmayman. Ashunda turib, vahim his qilmay qarang. Yo'lda mansam, uyimda o'tirsam, yolg'iz qolsam qo'rqayman. Bir oy men uchun bir yildan jiq qachon ketaman deb turib, shunchalik aldirab ketdim.
For Amina now, life in Istanbul doesn't feel that far away from China. She told me she still lives in fear of Chinese surveillance. When she first arrived, she was too scared to download Western apps like WhatsApp and YouTube, apps that were banned in China. That constant feeling of being watched still hangs around her. And leaving Xinjiang didn't mean leaving the feeling of Xinjiang. And the feeling of Xinjiang is spreading around the world. In January 2021, a series of protests took place in Russia. Despite the ongoing pandemic and the freezing cold, thousands of people across the country filled the streets in solidarity with opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who was being tried in Moscow for violating probation terms. As people marched in the streets, many of them unmasked, they were also being watched. We spoke to 3 people who got caught up in the surveillance dragnet.
Да, что-то, наверное, я не знаю, что такое бояться, наверное. Просто. Я боюсь жить в отсталой стране, поэтому надо выходить.
Потому что, мне кажется, в Москве уже довольно сложно скрыться, потому что здесь столько способов найти кого-то. Да, ну не знаю, в лес можно уехать, выкинуть все телефоны, может, ага, там не найдут.
Камера — это не единственный у нас источник слежения. Твой телефон — это твой враг на данный момент. Тебя могут по твоему телефону найти.
My name is Kamil. I'm a historian. I work for George Mason University.
Меня зовут Самаридин Раджабов.
Привет, меня зовут Георгий Малец, псевдоним Мартин. Я 10 лет снимаю фото-видео митингов, разных политических акций.
All 3 of them participated in January protests in Moscow. They knew that every street had cameras filming their every move. The police then used that footage to track them through the city.
31 января я собирался на митинг в поддержку Алексея Навального. Я спустился в метро, в вагоне метро я заметил, что на меня бежит сотрудник полиции. И я сразу понял, что этот молодой человек бежит за мной. Я не стал выходить, ко мне подходит он, просит меня быстро покинуть вагон. Говорит, на тебя сработал фейс-контроль. Но я ему говорю, чувак, я же не в клуб пришел, какой фейс-контроль? Типа, я в метро, я в вагоне, я еду.
The same day, George too was heading to the protest, despite the warning that he received the night before. The police came looking for him at his parents' place, and they told his father to give him a message. Don't go to the rally the next day.
Я спустился на станцию метро, прошел турникеты, спускаюсь на эскалаторе, и ко мне подходит, наверное, 5 полицейских. Такие, все, пройдемте. Я говорю, в чем дело? Она говорит, будем там проверять, не находитесь ли вы в розыске.
Like George, Kamil had been to so many demonstrations before, and he wasn't worried about being arrested. He also wasn't thinking about being surveilled. But a week after he went to the protest, he got a knock on the door.
People from anti-extremist center of Moscow police came to my home. I opened the door. They said that they want me to go with them to police station to talk about my participation on the demonstration. I asked if I'm detained. They said yes. So I didn't really have any other option.
They took him to the police department and they went through his file and they checked the photos that they had of him from the demonstrations against his face.
Basically, they were interrogating me and also scrolling through my file. And just sitting on the other side of the table, but I could see the photos.
The police sent Kamil and Samaridin to detention centers outside Moscow.
Третий митинг меня взяли 10 суток. Сокамерники на этот раз были очень прикольные, Слушай, это было весело, на самом деле. Это были одни из самых веселых моих 10 дней. Это был как детский лагерь. Мы все молодые ребята. В камере 2 рэпера, один саунд-продюсер, другой футболист, и один еще айтишник, типа. Мы не спали до 3-4 часов ночи. Мы просто угорали. Мы смеялись, шутили. Мы играли постоянно.
I would say maybe 95% were political for demonstrations, either because they participated in demonstrations or because they called for demonstrations on the internet. There were people even jailed for like joking tweets.
It still amazes me how calmly Kamil and Samarie didn't speak about this. But I was curious whether the police, the files, the cameras at the metro turnstiles had affected them psychologically.
Когда я спускался в метро, такой думаешь, типа, а не спустятся ли, там, не будет ли стоять полицейский опять снова в конце эскалатора. Потом уже начинаются эти вот странные, там, не знаю, плохой сон, снятся полицейские, снятся задержания, какая-то, может, даже некоторая паранойя все время происходит, там, несколько...
I realize that now the world is very transparent, and everything I post on the internet can and will be used against me. If I wore a mask and glasses and a hat, nobody would recognize me now. But I realize that in a few years, I'm pretty sure in 5 years, it wouldn't matter at all what I'm wearing. They will be able to perfectly identify me just by my silhouette, by how I work. In Russia, I'm pretty sure this surveillance is not the most technologically developed or advanced in Russia. It's rather in Russia, they are unashamed to use it.
Like Kamil said, surveillance technology is constantly evolving. It's becoming smarter every year. Just think about it, when the pandemic began, it only took Chinese technology companies a matter of weeks before they said their facial recognition cameras could recognize masked people. Despite this, activists around the world are doing all they can to trick the system, coming up with ways to distort their faces. You might have seen people, for example, in the Hong Kong protests, with unusual Malevich-like makeup on their faces. I tried it myself in London last year with an anti-surveillance group called the Dazzle Club. I went with my best friend and we walked through the streets of London. Unusually for London, it was raining. My makeup ran, my friends didn't, and she was kind enough to take a picture and insist that I use it for this event. So here it is. There you go. Thanks, Sasha. That's enough of that picture. Well, today you'll not only be able to see this makeup, but you'll also be able to try it for yourself as well. We're so excited to have Dasha Kozlova and Dana Stepanova, 2 activists from the group Follow in Moscow, and they are going to walk us through, step by step, how to paint your face in a way that might trick a facial recognition camera. So Dasha and Dana, we're so excited to have you. Welcome to the stage. We're just waiting a second for, there we go. You're both here. So do introduce yourselves and tell us about how you do this makeup, and please show us as well.
Okay, hi everybody. We're so glad to be here. Thank you for having us. My name is Daria. My pronouns are she, her. This is Dana. In our screen, and her pronouns as well are she, her. And today we're gonna show you anti-surveillance makeup tutorial. So welcome to our anti-surveillance makeup tutorial. Okay, yes, okay. We are co-creators of the project called Follow, or Sleduj in Russian, or only in English. And you can find us by Googling the Follow activists, or by following the link to the Telegram, where we post our informational posts and everything else, and the manifesto of our project. And yeah, this is artistic creative project we represent today. Okay, can we begin right now?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, do.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so welcome to our anti-surveillance makeup tutorial, and this makeup is gonna show you how to avoid unwanted attention from the cameras on the street. So there are several reasons why you should wear this makeup. First and most obvious is this way we could protect ourselves from the surveillance and unwanted attention on the street from the cameras, and at least for a few minutes. However, we want to remind you that this makeup is a symbolic gesture rather than a universal mechanism. And with the help of colorful prints and colors, we draw attention to the problem and express our opinion. We're trying to be visible in the most straightforward way. It is a symbol of dissent, of community, of us coming together to express ourselves. However, we don't know how the system works, and we cannot find any information about this. So we're making this makeup by the path of mistakes and disguises. So, what you can use for the makeup today? Whatever you can find at home, actually. You can use water-based colors, you can use eyeshadows, you can use lipstick, eyeliners, whatever is more convenient for you. So, first of all, as you can see, Dana is applying moisturizing cream because, as we know, skincare is the key. And even if we're protesting some really reasonable costs, we don't have to forget about self-care. And some of the products you can use, for example, water-based colors, can literally dry your skin out. And yes, so right now Dana is applying the cream, and in a second she will be applying shadows and some colors. She's opening them right now. Okay, and actually you can, for example, if you use water-based colors, they give the most vivid color, so no need for swatches and more attention to your face. And yeah, you can see it on Dana's face. Okay, but actually you can use like usual eye patches, for example, because we have to remember to protect not only our personal data but our skin as well. Okay, so you can see Dana is putting the colors in a random and chaotic way. This is not only to draw more attention to herself, or because she's feeling a bit rebellious. Because our face is a kind of symmetrical square of dots and natural lines, for example, cheeks, lips. We have to create a symmetrical print on our face. So paying attention to destroying the symmetry of your face by creating this like rebellious and asymmetrical print to make your face not looking like your natural face. For example, your cheeks, your lips, your eyes, and you really need to pay attention to this. Okay, and actually you have to draw the elements on different zones and levels on your face. So as you can see, Dana is doing this right now. Like you can literally print the flower in this, so it doesn't matter. But not your natural face. So the main thing is to darken some parts of your face. For example, areas of the eyes, nose, and lips. Be creative. This makeup doesn't have any boring rules of classical makeup. You really have to make your whole face work during this makeup. So think and express yourself in the most straightforward way. As we speak, Dana is darkening her forehead because forehead is a structural foundation of the face, therefore the most identifiable. So as well, we don't have to listen to some boring classical makeup rules like only foundation on your forehead. No, girl. You really have to pay some attention to your forehead and draw some lines there, draw some geometrical figures there. So as you can see, Dana is doing this right now. Okay, she also illuminates her eyes because, first of all, as old Russian saying says, eyes are the mirror of the soul. But they're not only the mirror of the soul, they are the mirror of your recognition, because you can, they are the thing you're going to be recognized for. They're really important to kind of destroy the natural lines and spots on your eyes, like this, cheeks, and lips. So please pay attention to these three parts. Okay, plus in this makeup, there is no rule about making accent on only one part of your face, for example, eyes or lips. I think you all heard it, like, you know, just a bit lashes and a lot of red lipstick. But no, in this makeup, you can do both and express yourself in the most straightforward way, in the most creative way. And you can see Dana is doing this right now. She made her eyes glow and her lips really work, and by this she's gonna say some really important message. Okay, I think we're almost finished. Do you think so, Dana? Okay, we're almost finished, and what we want to say in the last words or in the conclusion, you have to always remember, you have to drag attention of the public and not of the surveillance and our personal data appropriation. So this is all for us, and Dana is ready to go and lighten the streets out. Okay, thank you so much.
Bravo, girls. This was great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was so beautiful. And please stick around because I definitely have a few questions for you both. So do come and join our discussion. Thank you very much. I know that our audience very much enjoyed it. The chat's been going off. So now I want to head into discussion mode. But before we do, I just want to introduce someone who couldn't come along today, but who we would have loved to have join us. Ashaki Jackson's a poet and social psychologist from Los Angeles. And in 2016, she published a series of poems titled Surveillance, looking at the witnessing of violence against Black communities in America via the prism of social media videos. She sent us this message, this video, and here she is with one of her poems.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashaki Jackson. I am a poet and researcher in Los Angeles, California, and I will be reading a poem today called "The Public Confuses Death for Pornography." I wrote this poem in a time of reflection and anger regarding the amount of times people were viewing videos of police brutality where Black people were being killed. If you look at the counters on many of these videos, the numbers exceed the hundreds of thousands, which either means that many people were watching this video or that people were continually looking and watching Black death as a spectacle. The public confuses Black death for pornography. You sit in the violence, teeter into the video from your safety. You are each time unsure of what you're viewing. Videos of Black bodies crumbling so primitively, it is convincing. You have long trusted your vision, can recall the arch of Bathsheba's dark miracles from your palace roof. You are entertained. Watching this makes you faithful to God and all of his craft. You are cautioned not to interpret what you see, told that the videos lack circumstance. You wonder what is off screen, what justifies these chronicled deaths. You are lucid and hidden. You can see the bodies fold and fold like dusky silk, but do not protest. It is captivating. You watch again, aroused and trusting the beauty of the scene. What is it called when you long for images, when you want more? Thank you.
That was Ashaki Jackson in Los Angeles. We're now going to go into discussion mode where we can talk about some of the issues raised here. So get ready to get involved. We have an amazing panel. And Sasha is now just going to bring some of the, was I muted? I don't know. Sasha's going to bring some of these amazing guests up onto the stage. I think we have at least 10 panelists joining from at least eight countries. So I want to say to our guests now, feel free to jump into the conversation at any point. You can raise your hand or physically or using the Zoom feature. We're, very relaxed here. And if you're jumping in, please do introduce yourself. Sasha is also going to post the names of our speakers into the chat now, so you can see who everyone is. And also to our guests, please do turn on your video as well. For our audience, so you can also participate. We would love for you to submit questions into the Q&A. If you want, you can submit them anonymously and me or Sasha will relay them to our panel. If you would like to join the stage and come and bring your question, we can do it kind of Clubhouse style, and you can submit your question with your name and we may ask you to come up to the stage to ask it yourself. I do want to say to our panelists, there are so many of you and we really hope we can get around to everyone. So do try and keep your answers a little bit brief. And yeah, I think that's everything. So, I guess I'm going to start with Dasha and Dana just because we all enjoyed that demonstration so much. I love how skincare is also the future of fighting surveillance. But I guess one of the things that you mentioned, Dasha, was that this doesn't always work, and when I tried it in London, I noticed that myself as well. The way that we were testing the makeup was testing using the Snapchat facial recognition feature, which couldn't recognize me with my makeup on. It did recognize me once it had run. But, with the sort of Chinese Hikvision cameras or the more advanced facial recognition cameras, I think that this makeup is starting to, I don't think that it necessarily works. So what is the real point of doing this kind of face makeup if in a few years' time it maybe doesn't work at all?
Okay, I'm now gonna give my my colleague, my friend Dana, a word, and she's gonna start, and then we're gonna just
Я не могу.
Okay.
Should I start? Yeah.
Okay, I'm really sorry about this. Okay, I'm gonna just start. As I said in our tutorial, this is not, of course, a universal mechanism which will work every time, especially as you, of course, correctly and obviously mentioned, with the advanced technology, which I guess right now can recognize the heat waves of the body or something. Of course, we don't know that exactly because we don't have any information towards how these cameras exactly recognize us and how they're using, how they're being used. And so in this way, this is a symbolic gesture from us. We also try to kind of prove or unprove our makeup by using our domestic social media of Kontakte and recognition in there because it is widely used there. And sometimes it worked, some doesn't. For example, we understood that you really have to sort of paint on your eye, for example, if you want to have a maximum effect of this makeup. But of course, this is not a universal mechanism. Dana, do you have anything to add? Okay, Dana is gonna add something.
Yes, thank you a lot. But what's more, of course, we do not know what exactly does the surveillance system track. Yeah, so and maybe. Evidently, it is not just simply our face and the special spots like the corners of eyes, lines of skulls, the corners of lips and stuff like that. Maybe some cameras, some modern ones, are also tracking something like the way we walk, the way we our tattoos, our haircut. Our appearance in general. However, our makeup is not only and not simply about surveillance safetiness. Yes, it's much more about the symbolic gesture. So, and this is the point. We highlight that we are not against the surveillance system in general. Indeed, effectively working cameras can reduce the level of, I don't know, mortality, of murder and stuff like that. But our message is that we do not know exactly how this system works and whether it is transparent enough or not. And thus we, in such a naive way, try to drop a special message. Look, we do not exactly how does this system work, or how does our data is our data used and saved, and for what reason does it is it saved. However, we try to predict something unless you start speaking about it with us directly. So it's primarily our symbolic gesture, I suppose.
Sure. I mean, Kamil, I want to bring you in because I was so struck, I don't know if you were around for our presentation, but we showed you talking about how, in 5 years, it doesn't matter if you're wearing a hat and sunglasses, these systems will still be able to recognize you. Do you think it's worth fighting back against these systems, or are we fighting a losing battle? Should we just keep moisturizing and hope for the best?
I would say that obviously with every passing year, the battle will be with more and more losing odds. So if we need to make any resistance, the earlier the better, I would say.
And we also have Ekaterina Schulmann here, who was also stopped on the Moscow metro in much the same way that some of our other guests were stopped. And Ekaterina, I remember your tweet. I think you said something like, the police uttered these fatal, ominous words. They said to us, face control. And, people in Russia are not, they're used to being followed, surveilled. They're used to having their protests cracked down on. Does the appearance of cameras in Moscow's metro station really change the way that these protests come about? Does it really change anything for people living in Russia? You're just muted.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you. I'm happy to be in this discussion, especially as a kind of a witness rather than an expert, which is a rare case with me. I was not stopped personally. My husband was. And yes, we heard the words face control. I heard the same words from the rapper's story a few minutes before. So that's the expression they use. And it's really bizarre because it's not from any lore. It's a phrase that used to be used by the face control in Night's Club, naturally. So they said to my husband that we have ориентировка on you. Face control сработал, the face control worked. So they took him to a police station in the metro station. I went with him. And then there were a few calls going to and fro between the police and other police people, and then they sent us to the police station proper, where he was questioned as a witness on an unnamed criminal case. And then he was let go. The questioning wasn't much of a success because he mainly cited the Constitution Article 51, which is a duty of every good Russian citizen. This is the article that prevents you from testifying against yourself and your nearest family. And this is the thing police actually, if not directly advises you to do, but kind of condones with. Will you use 51? Oh, yes, you will use 51. So much the better for both of us. Less work for us, less trouble for you. At the same time, as my husband was stopped on the same subway station, a few more people were detained as well. Frankly, in this specific case, I have suspicions whether the cameras really worked. Maybe they just use it as a pretext. They stopped a few people who looked to them as possible participants in the mass rally that was then taking place, or rather finishing. Because we were at this rally. I was there as an observer from Moscow Helsinki group, and he was following me. So we decided that the thing is more or less over. And since all the central police stations were blocked by the police, we were looking for the nearest subway station that was open. And this Baumanskaya was the one that we came upon. And that seemed to be working. Pleasant surprise. But as we came down, we were almost immediately stopped. So I think they were just catching people who looked to them possible suspects. And this whole camera thing was rather a high technology pretext to sound plausible, which doesn't mean that the cameras are not working. I just have an idea that it was not the cameras that worked in our specific case. Whether, returning to your question, whether this affects protest behavior, coming back to my proper persona as a political scientist, of course, the feeling of being constantly watched is not the one to empower civic disobedience. This kind of tends to scare people from participating in anything outright. For example, the latest initiative of Navalny team, this map of protest, the site that encourages people to register as possible participants in future protests, when it was published, the first question people asked was, are you not complying a database for the police? A Russia-wide database of all those who are likely to participate in future protest actions. Are you not doing the job of Department A, the anti-extremism department? And this shows how wide and how deep is this constant suspicion planted in our minds. So yes, we cannot call this technique ineffective. It has its limits of effectivity. Whenever the people are angry enough to take part in a real protest rally rather than just write something on the internet, they are angry enough to take the consequences. Protests didn't start being dangerous yesterday. It didn't start being dangerous because of the cameras. It's a decades-long story of growing repressive pressure, of growing costs of protest behavior. So while agreeing to the certain chilling effectivity of the surveillance state, I would say that these are the risks people are probably ready to take whenever they are ready to protest.
I want to bring in Philip here. Philip's from Serbia, as you might have guessed from his name. And Philip, I mean, have you seen that in Serbia? Is there this kind of, I mean, first of all, I'd love you to explain to our audience what a chilling effect is, because it's sort of a term that gets bandied around in surveillance circles. And what is a chilling effect? And have you seen evidence of this chilling effect? I mean, Serbia spent huge amounts of money on very state-of-the-art Chinese cameras, but as Ekaterina said, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe those cameras could just be, writing, not filming at all, and it would have the same effect. So have you seen a chilling effect from these?
Yeah, of course. Hi everyone. First, thanks for inviting us all here. It's a nice place to discuss. We had a protest last year, and we have a kind of nice protest culture in Belgrade, which somewhat helps preserve our democracy here, because media is controlled and it's destroying democracy. So with these mass surveillance systems in place, we can see that directly the protest culture is one of the targets of the government, besides journalists, activists, and political opponents. Last year, demonstrations against selective COVID restrictions and curfews in Belgrade were a strong example of how government is imposing fear through massive surveillance. So compared to the protests for last 20 years that we were going out on the streets, these were the first one under thousands of cameras capable of recognizing our faces and converting them into ones and zeros. And that data is easily stored in government data centers, ready to be cross-referenced with the databases of, in example, people employed in public sector, those who get social aid, or small business owners that might need, an additional tax officer visit. So basically, what message they're sending is that you might not want to go to protest because you might face some consequences. So government officials are constantly yelling in media about using video footage and processing protesters, which makes a lot of people change their mind about going out to the streets in the first place. For those who go out anyway, during the last decade, we could just enable, like airplane mode on your phone, so the mobile operators are not tracking you, and avoid front row in the protest ground to avoid like the direct surveillance. But now we have to be fully disguised, looking like, I don't know, like terrorists in Counter-Strike, as soon as we leave our flats until we come back home. So yeah, the worst thing is that we actually still don't have confirmation nor proof that police is using facial recognition. But only this sense that it could be employed is internalizing very oppressive feeling that are definitely chilling us as a civil society. And this is not good for the democratic processes. If people are afraid to go out to say something, even if they're not recognized, by the algorithms, they don't know if they are or they're not, they're just gonna chill, they're not gonna protest, and this is not then a democracy. It's a hybrid regime that we're here at the moment.
Tell us, in Serbia, does the general public care about surveillance? Do they care about this massive rollout of cameras, or is there like some antipathy there? And I'm curious for the rest of our panel as well. In your communities, have you seen? Is there a great deal of are people worried about this stuff, or?
Yeah, actually, more and more. This is really good. I don't know. It might be that people learned it through pop culture, through movies and TV shows and video games. Like Watch Dogs, and people get to understand the privacy issues. There are some popular Netflix movies now that will explain how your data and where it is going. And then we made a strong campaign here to tell people, there's cameras everywhere, and this data is the same. It's being cross-referenced with the data that they're collecting, that the governments and companies are collecting about you in the internet and cyberspace. So this is very dangerous, because now you cannot leave your phone home. Now you can go out and still be tracked. And I think people are becoming aware. We had this issue like a month ago with WhatsApp privacy policy. You saw a really strong migration of people. Some people, it's still probably a bubble, but I'm really optimistic that people are understanding that there is not any more digital life and real life. It's all the same life.
Albert, I want to bring you.
Yes, I was going to. No, I saw that Albert raised his hand.
And also, I think let's bring Felix to the stage, who asked a question about changing your face, so we can bring him to the stage and he can come next. But Albert, I want to come to you. You're based in New York City. Do people in New York City care about surveillance? Oh, I can't quite hear you, even though you're unmuted. Can everyone else hear him?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Perfect. Well, we've definitely seen an inflection point with the surveillance debate in the U.S. over the last year, because, the surveillance debate is innately linked to the broader debate over police force and police violence. And with just the historic movement to protect Black lives and say Black Lives Matter in response to the killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, so many others, we have this growing awareness of how surveillance feeds the broader police state. And so we have seen a record number of jurisdictions banning facial recognition across the US. More than a dozen localities have done that. And we see growing pressure here in New York to ban facial recognition, and also to ban a number of forms of invasive surveillance tools.
And Albert, I think you do some work on surveillance of Muslim minorities in New York. Is that something that you're seeing, and how has that developed?
Yeah, this is a really painful legacy of policing in New York City, that for 2 decades we've systematically targeted the Muslim community, that for more than a decade following 9/11, we had something called the NYPD Demographics Unit that tried to map out systematically, block by block, around the tri-state area where Muslim Americans lived, where they went to pray, where their businesses were, where their schools were, treating them as a threat simply for their faith. And we see, real reverberations of that both in the broader U.S. Policy under the Trump administration targeting Muslim Americans, but then real parallels to the way that mass surveillance has been deployed in China targeting the Uyghur community. And so it's one of these things that where in the U.S. we often frame ourselves as as being a counterpoint to the Chinese surveillance state, but in practice, we have deployed some of the most invasive, discriminatory, and anti-democratic surveillance systems anywhere in the world.
Mm. Aziz, I want to bring you in here. I mean, Aziz, Issa Ilkun, we're so excited to have him today. Me and Aziz have been in touch for over a year and a half, and Aziz is Uyghur. He's living in London. He has watched his homeland turn into a digital prison. And, I made a big sweeping statement during my presentation about how this feeling of Xinjiang is spreading. But, Aziz, I wonder if that was equating the struggle. Maybe that is a kind of, maybe that's not the right way to describe it. I mean, what would you say to someone who said that they weren't worried about surveillance or that they had nothing to hide? You're muted, sorry. You're still muted. Hang on. Just Sasha's going to unmute. There we go.
As well. Thank you so much inviting for this important meeting. It's very useful. I really enjoyed the hearing from our respected ladies. Very interested, especially in Russia as well. Yes, I myself deeply put myself into digital surveillance. I started from the web communication at the first. I studied a lot about how the Uyghur communication changing since 2009. So yes, it's we have to aware the situation. This is a global disaster for the humanity, for the cyber liberty, and I can compare this London to Urumqi, with the capacity of Xinjiang autonomous region.
Yes, because I think London actually has more or a comparable number of cameras to Urumqi. Is that right?
No, I can say that the number of cameras still. I mean, like you cannot compare the number of camera. To China, where they installed in the Uyghur region. This is I mean there's nothing in London, but what I noticed is I live in North London, quite suburb area. We used to have very nice park. What I noticed recently, there used to be no camera at all. A few months ago, one of the reporter wanted to study about high vision camera installation in London, because many
which is like the biggest
contract. I intuited that investigation, right? And I just noticed that. I look around my neighborhood or what. I went to the park and then looked. Oh gosh, this is 2-3 newly installed security camera, and every pole there's 4 or 5 large camera. Okay. And I searched the local borough's information. There's no high vision camera installed in my area. So this is like Dina, we have to care about it. No, it's you know, you are not noticing, but it's gradually taking place all around you. Even the Philip said, many people aware, but also many people are not aware. When you, for example, like even taking your mobile phone or using your credit card, everything tracked, every detail tracked. You should be aware of this. So many ways, for example, you can, yes, people may say what I have to, hide. I don't have to hide anything. But the thing is, this depends on the which country do you live. For example, you cannot compare London to Beijing or Urumqi. China is one of the authoritarian communist autocratic state. I can say if I can say it's worse than Germany during Second World War. Especially for the Uyghur people. Have you heard about that? There's Tencent and Tencent also Huawei. They developed a software recently was approved. Even there's kind of racially profiled that camera. It can directly detect Uyghurs' face, how Uyghurs look like. That was comes up to the media, right? Yes, Uyghurs are Central Asian people and not look like Han Chinese in East Asia, right? You have very distinctive feature. So it can kind of put in the system, in the programming, and make it kind of, as Isobel said earlier, that the Uyghur lady in Turkey, how she gave her face to and voice, smile, all different features. So there's like not even this is quite scary if I talk about. Not even about the one types of surveillance kit like security camera. There's also like biological now. There's more than 3 million innocent Uyghur Chinese citizens. Ethnically, they are not Han Chinese, right? They are not in concentration camps because they want to occupy that territory forever. So they did. There's lots of witness camps up. Every month, every male detainees give around 200 gram blood. They store all the blood and setting developing the kind of DNA, lots of medicines. Even last year comes up to the West Coast, the U.S. Customs declared they confiscated 2 tons of hair. Comes from that's also Uyghur woman's hair. So millions of people in the camp, they shaved all the long hairs Uyghurs used to grow, Uyghur women, and used this export to the U.S. Of course, this is many there's the evidence the genocide is taking place. What I want to say here, connected to our topic, so not only the security cameras or surveillance technology. As this is, of course, the surveillance technology like Huawei, Tencent, big Chinese high tech, so run all the surveillance system, and also like like every aspect of your life, social media, for example. For example, you know TikTok, or everybody, all of you know TikTok, yes, but you don't know what's the TikTok in China. You cannot.
I mean, the way that when we were reporting on Xinjiang, TikTok was a massively important tool, or Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, was a massively important tool in actually finding out. It was one of the only ways for a long time that we could have any sense of what was going on in Xinjiang, because it was like the only thing that where information about Xinjiang was slipping through the net. I mean, so yeah, but TikTok is a whole different rabbit hole. So I wanna ask a question that's come up a couple of times in our Q&A, and I do encourage our audience to please continue with your questions, and we'll try and bring you up on the stage as well. But we're all here. A lot of the people in our panel come from surveillance activism backgrounds, anti-surveillance backgrounds. We tried to get some pro-surveillance people to come and join us. We probably emailed a dozen, and surprisingly, none of them wanted to come. But would you? And if we have any pro-surveillance people in the audience, please do raise your hand or write in the chat, and we'll bring you on the stage.
Yes, we have somebody actually who wants to join and ask the question in person. If that's okay.
Bring him in.
We have, Felix here, Felix Weiss, who is just going to join us now. Hello, Felix. Can you hear us?
Are you turn your camera on if you're able to, so that we can see you?
Here he is. Coming.
There's, I think, something. There we go. Hi, Felix.
Hi. Yes, first of all, thanks for organizing it and for the chance to participate, and all the participants of the discussion. Thanks so much. I tried to keep it brief. I have two questions, if I might. First question goes to Daria and Dana. It's about avoiding this facial recognition. I'd like to know if it's also possible, like, to use another method, like, for example, using tape or something to change somehow the appearance of the face, because I mean, if you paint it, I mean, I understand how you can trick the surveillance cameras with this, but at the same time, if you walk like this on the street, for example, I mean, you attract attention. Everybody knows something is maybe fishy about you. Why do you paint your face like this? I mean, if you're anyway in a crowd with many people at a demonstration, yes, of course, many people are like this, then it's maybe fine. But if you just want to avoid when you're walking alone or something like this, then you draw a lot of attention. This is my first question. And
well, let's start with that. We can come on to your second. And so, simply put, basically, is there another way apart from very garish makeup to hide from facial recognition cameras? I actually do want to bring in Ella and Matthias here, because they're kind of experts on reclaiming your face. Ella, do you know of any other way that you can hide from facial recognition without looking a little bit eccentric?
Yeah, so I've seen some great kind of activism around the world of glasses and sunglasses that can scramble the tech. I've also seen fabric prints that you can wear in a scarf or a hoodie. So there are some kind of slightly more discreet ways of evading the tech. But the wider problem is that the tech, the companies developing it, they're kind of constantly evolving and trying to evade the fact that we're trying to evade it, which is why slightly less activisty, but we're calling for a ban in the EU on the use of these technologies in public spaces where it kind of contributes to mass surveillance, because we think that whilst it's awesome and super cool to resist these tech and to scramble it and to express our voices by dissenting, that's not a sustainable solution, and actually we need to cut off the use of these harmful technologies at the roots so that they can't be deployed against us in the first place.
Felix, I will come back to your second question. I just want to bring in Matthias here. So just to introduce Matthias for a second, he has spent more than a year, I think a year and a half, fighting Clearview AI, which I don't know if any of you have heard of Clearview AI, but basically they are an AI company that track people using facial recognition. They say that they're the future of fighting crime. You can give them one photo of your face and they'll find all of the other photos of your face that exist on the internet. They can identify you. And they say, that they're revolutionizing criminal justice. So Matthias has tried to get his face back from this AI company. And I mean, it's taken you a very long time. It's been a very long and arduous process. Was it worth it? And, for those of us who feel like we don't need to hide, they might not understand why you went on this journey. Why did you go on this journey, and was it worth it?
Well, we didn't reach the end of the journey yet, so it's still ongoing. The company deleted my data, but there are millions of other affected people because the company owns 3 billion images. And yes, I would say it's worth it. I don't know if I would have started this journey if I knew in the beginning that it would take that much time, but in the end it was one step after another, and I just kept going, and now we are here, and after about 1 year and a few weeks I was able to force this company to delete my biometric data.
It just seems like such a small thing. It's like they deleted They actually only had one picture of your face, I think, and then you sent me the images. I think there were 6 other pictures, and it turns out the others weren't you at all. So, is there a danger here? And for anyone else on our panel, do answer as well. Is there a danger here when the facial recognition doesn't even work? Is that just as dangerous, more dangerous? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think, Matthias?
It's very dangerous because, I mean, we have seen an example in the US, for example. There was a black man misidentified by facial recognition, and the police blindly trusted the facial recognition technology and put the man into jail, and the man was innocent.
And does anyone else on our panel have anything to add about whether it matters? Whether is low tech bad surveillance worse than high tech surveillance? Yes, Albert.
Well, one of the things that makes high-tech surveillance so dangerous is it makes it so cheap to track so many people over an extended period of time. And so you expand the amount of surveillance in total that's being done in our communities, which means that even if the error rate is the same, the total number of people who are being placed in harm's way goes up. And with facial recognition, for example, this is a tool that when it gets it wrong, people will get hurt. People will potentially get killed by police officers in unnecessary police encounters. But when that tool is refined, when it is working effectively, you create the perfect tool of authoritarian control, where a single photo can track every single person going to Friday prayers at a mosque or going to a political protest. And so either way, these systems pose a very potent threat to the communities they're used upon.
I'd like Felix. Can I let Felix ask a second question?
Oh, yes,
I think
yes.
Yeah. Please, Felix.
Yeah, this question would be to Mr. Elkun. I read these days, yesterday or day before yesterday, an interview with Mr. Abdullah Imerov in German TV, and he was talking about the situation. And I mean, I heard about it, I read about it before, but anyway, what this man said in the interview was quite troubling and disturbing, of course. And now the EU and also the US, they impose some sanctions on China, but however, these sanctions, they can be labeled as, I don't know, not homeopathic, but maybe more symbolic. I can't really, I mean, nobody can really imagine that this would change something. So my question would be, what kind of pressure should be put on China? Or I mean, is it realistic to put any pressure on China by the EU or by the US or other actors to change the situation and to really, make a difference?
Thank you for asking this question. It's yes. I was also talking to the media. It's not enough, but very positive step, because we've been crying for this, complaining to this media since 2017. Now already 3 years later, we first positive step. We heard from US, Canada, and the European Union, including UK. And the US, Canada, and the Netherlands Parliament already acknowledged, recognized the Chinese committing genocide on Uyghurs. The sanctions very positive step, but far not enough. This is we can say yes, it's symbolic, because they only sanctions few low level of Chinese officials. Even they does not include the Chinese Communist Party Secretary for Xinjiang, Qin Chuanguo, is a masterminder of this genocide, and also Xi Jinping himself. He ordered this. So I'm very hopeful one day all of the Chinese officials committed this crime will be held accountable. And the second part of your question, it's it makes change. It makes change. I'm very positive now. Unified response from North America and Europe, it will make change. China cannot last longer in this with this crime against humanity. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. We've also just Murray Hunter's just joined us. So Murray, hi, thank you so much for joining us. But I think we're going to ask Eleftherios something. Sasha, did you have a question for him?
Yes, we've had a couple of questions actually that I'm going to combine into one, but we've had a couple of questions about sort of the positive side of surveillance. And in relation to this, I want to bring in another question that was asked earlier about the pandemic and COVID. It's hard to avoid this question, this topic now, but during the pandemic, a lot of the states have been trying to use surveillance sort of for a greater good, you know, to make people comply with rules of the lockdown and trace people, contact tracing to sort of stop the spread. I'm wondering, where is this line between surveillance for good and surveillance that, you know, is infringing on people's human rights? A couple of questions, people have asked this question. So, and if there is, maybe you can comment on that, since I know in Greece, there have been quite a few developments in terms of surveillance recently with drones and face cams that police have been using. Am I right?
Exactly. Many thanks also for your question. Also, I would like to begin by saying that I'm very impressed with your event so far, all the parts of it, the testimonies from Russia and China, the makeup tutorial, the poetry, also this discussion that we're having right now. So congrats. Going back to your questions, I believe that as a lawyer, because I'm a lawyer and I see things through these legal glasses, I believe that there should always be a balance. And it's very, very important because we live in a rule of law country, we live in a democratic country, that every use of, let's say, new technology should respect the proportionality and the necessity principles assessment. This means that, of course, you can use new technologies in order to fight crime. Of course, you can use new technologies in order to fight such a deadly disease as COVID. Nevertheless, you have to do it in specific, let's say, limits. First and foremost, you have to have clear rules. You have to have a legal regime providing all the necessary safeguards, all the necessary obligations by the law, by the legal authorities, by the public authorities, using this technology. And this law should be clear, should also provide for remedial rules, for example, in case of misconduct. When it comes to biometric mass surveillance, for example, such law doesn't exist in Greece. We have the directive on law enforcement, the law enforcement directive, which clearly states there that, for example, in order to process biometric information, so facial images, biometric data like fingerprints and other types of biometric data, you need to have a law in place. Such a law doesn't exist in Greece. Second, these laws should be providing for the use of technology that is necessary in a democratic society. You have to justify this necessity. You cannot say, for example, that something is more efficient, or something is more useful, or something is more tech-oriented, or nice to have. You have to make an assessment prior to adopting a law, saying that we have this specific problem in our society. In order to solve it, there are 2 or 3 different ways. We are deciding to solve it because it's necessary to solve it. And here comes the third requirement, the proportionality test. Because we said that maybe there are 2 or 3 different ways to solve a specific problem, but we have to choose for the one that's more proportionate to solve this problem. So you cannot take a bazooka, for example, in order to kill a fly. You cannot apply facial recognition, biometric mass surveillance in real time to fight, for example, terrorist attacks, or to fight, for example, petty theft attacks, or to fight murders, or to fight in general crime. You have to find as a society tools that are proportionate enough. Of course, we can take a camera, put it in our chest, and have it 24/7 all around where we go, in our homes, in our squares, and everywhere. But will this solve crimes? Maybe yes, 100%. Yeah. Do we need such a society? I think no, because it's not in compliance with the rule of law. It's not in compliance with what we have been fighting for, not us, our ancestors and the people before us in the human rights activist field.
Mari, I want to bring you in, seeing as you've joined us. Just to introduce Mari Hunter for a second, he is the author of Boris the Baby Bot. It's a children's book about surveillance. So, Mari, I mean, Eleftherios was kind of talking just then about, surveillance in fairly simple terms about these kind of dichotomies, dilemmas that the public face. One of the things I sometimes think about is, it's amazing how much technology is developing and we're moving into the future, and kids most of all understand that. Are we selling kids a gloomy dystopia if we tell them how bad technology is?
It's interesting that you say that. I mean, I think the real problem is adults buying into the gloomy dystopia. And one of the things I loved so much about that makeup tutorial was how joyful it was. Like this idea of resisting around creating I mean, it's very difficult not to feel dystopian, but remembering to create a sense of joy around this resistance. And I certainly, I guess kids are being sold whatever it is that adults are giving them. So some people, I would say the majority of these systems are selling a sense of freedom with this technology, a sense of inevitability with this technology, because that's how it's been shaped with adults. And for some of us, I think it is very difficult for children to engage with the seriousness of this, and particularly like children. Many children want to be surveilled. It's a kind of even if they're not engaging in it, children don't necessarily know what end-to-end encryption is. But it's one of the things that a child wants from an adult is to be watched, to be held, to be protected, to be observed. But I'm interested in the idea of creating stories for children around these technologies that are about resistance and understanding what justice and injustice is, whether that's technology or climate change or whatever else. But the most important thing
about kids wanting to be watched, and we all know also, we were talking about, Aziz mentioned TikTok earlier, there's no one who loves TikTok more than like a 5-year-old, and they love this stuff, like they want this stuff. So, is it going against human nature to say like, look away, like, you shouldn't want to be watched.
Yeah, look, I think. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Sasha.
No, go for it. I'll ask the question after.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the real difficulty for the activists and the creators and the lawyers and the parents. Often there's the same people all at once. Is we need to be able to create alternatives for children. It's not just about don't touch the stove or don't use the phone or whatever it is that's going to make that thing more and more attractive. It's like, okay, can we create technological platforms or technological etiquettes and understandings that are empowering for children, that are safe and obviously technologically and kind of legally secure. So TikTok probably isn't it. And so kind of we need to be thinking about what those alternatives are, and it's going to require so much cross-pollination. And so there's a number of people on this call who I think have so much to offer in the spirit of that. Like, okay, it's going to be fun, it's going to be empowering. But if we leave this as a purely market, if we leave this to the market, if we leave this to big tech to give us the TikTok that's going to be kid safe, I don't want that to come from Silicon Valley. I want that to come from kind of alternative communities.
I think we're going to wrap up. We're getting to quarter past, so we aren't going to go on too much longer. But I think we have time for a few more questions.
Yes, there's one very interesting question that just came in twice as well, and I think we want to ask it, and we also ask it to our attendees. So I'm going to launch a poll in a second. But the question is, do we really need to care about protecting our privacy? What about the people who don't feel like they need to hide, that their lives are sort of not significant enough to be interesting to anyone? I think this is a very interesting question, and let me launch a poll. Meanwhile, whoever of our panel wants to answer that question, please raise your hand.
Ekaterina, what do you think? Oh, here's the poll.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. No, I don't see the poll.
Oh, it's come up on your screen maybe, but don't worry about the poll. What do you think?
Whether there are people insignificant enough to be of no importance to anyone. Hello?
Yeah, or what about people?
Why do we need to care? Why do we need to care about our privacy?
Because you never know what sort of interest you may inspire. We may not all be civic activists. We may not all be public figures, but we are all customers. We all have some money that we can spend. We all have private information that we are possibly anxious to hide. So in a consumer society, no person is an island, and no person is of no interest. So our data is a resource that can be used. And I think think that in the situation we're in, speaking specifically of Russia and maybe to the same extent of China, the question and the threat is not technology per se, but the legal framework and the state that is creating and exploiting this legal framework. So it's not so much about the cameras being evil. And I think somebody said a good word in favor of the cameras. They do help to lower the levels of simple crime. They have made a street robbery almost inexistent in bigger cities. They do successfully fight this low type criminality. But if you inhabit a state, a political regime, which has no checks and balances, which has no civic control over the law enforcement agencies, then any person becomes a possible victim. And of course, no one is insignificant enough to not be useful just to make better statistics for your local police station, which needs suspects for crimes they cannot naturally solve. So in this case, in this respect, if you are unfortunate enough to be a citizen of a non-democracy, then you certainly should care very much, strongly, about your personal data and especially about your civic rights.
Ekaterina, I think that's a perfect moment to end on. Ricardo, I'm so sorry we didn't get to you, but we will continue this conversation online, so do tweet us, give us your feedback. And I loved the conversation that happened as well in the chat on the side as well. It was like very busy over there as well. So thank you everyone who submitted your questions.
Thank our great panel and everyone who attended the event today, who joined us. This is very, very exciting for us. It's the first online event in this format that we're trying, but we hope that there will be many more. Thank you all so much. Isabel, do you want to add anything or should we let everyone go?
Let's let everyone go. And thank you everyone for coming. Thank you all for coming. That was so fantastic. And so thank you for everyone and good night.